What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. In today's video, we're going to be doing a beginner's guide to everything you need to know for owner mode within Madden. Specifically, we're on Madden 22 on next gen, but everything applies pretty much exactly the same as previous years. The menus might look a little bit different, but everything is still there. So we're going to cover everything that you need to know in order to be a successful owner within Madden. So to start off with, how do you create a franchise that is an owner mode franchise as opposed to just a traditional coach mode within Madden? So in any Madden, you're just going to go to the franchise mode section. This is again going to pop up in various different places within the game, depending on which game you're on, and then you're just going to go to create a new league. Whenever you go to create a league, you're going to be presented with multiple options, and those options are going to include an online franchise or an offline franchise, and you can be the owner of a franchise in online or offline mode, so this does not specifically affect anything. However, what I do want you to know is that if you do an online franchise, you're only going to be able to control one team at a time unless you're utilizing a second account to control another team. If you do an offline franchise, you can actually create characters, you can create owners, you can even create players and coaches for multiple teams at the same time, and you can very easily toggle between those characters so you can control multiple teams. So for today's purposes, I'm going to actually start an offline franchise for you guys, and we're just going to use the preseason roster. I mean, this doesn't matter. You can start at the current point within the NFL season or use the preseason roster. It's totally up to you guys on where you want to actually start with a franchise, but nonetheless, I'm going to go in, I'm going to select my team. So whenever we've actually selected our team, it's going to automatically default to the pre-existing coach on that team. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to select change role, and you're going to need to go to owner, and it's not going to have an existing owner for that team that you can take over like with the coaches. Instead, you're going to have to make a selection on your own and create your own owner. You have a choice between former player, lifelong fan, and financial mogul. None of these decisions really matter that much to you within franchise mode. Having the additional funds to start is nice, but you can always give yourself more funds within the game. There's an actual function to do that. It is nice to have the additional happiness boosts and things like that. That will affect how much fans are going to buy tickets and buy concessions and things like that, or you can get the bonus legacy score and roster happiness. The legacy score only applies if you're trying to, get to the top of the legacy leaderboard and have more legacy than any other owner or coach or player has ever had before, and that does sometimes apply to trophies. So that's really only where these factors are going to come into play. I generally just suggest starting with the one that gives 2 happiness boosts. You can select your name here and input your name, and that's pretty much it. You're good to go at that point. You will want to maybe dive into the settings real quick just to make sure everything is set to the start the way that you want it to be, but that's how you're going to create your owner. Now, in both online and offline franchise, you are going to have a setting here for league type, which is going to determine what type of characters can be in your league. So if you want to control owners and coaches and players on an offline franchise, you're going to want to set that to all, or you could set it to coaches and owners only. You could set it to owners only. There are other options, like let's say you're a coach, you can set it to coaches only, but that won't pop up right now. Same thing for players. If you're a player, you can set it to player only, but in today's video, we only have the option of coaches and owners, or owners only, or all. So that is going to be your determination of what you want in your league. If you're doing an online franchise, again, you're not going to be able to control other teams or other owners or anything like that. You can only control one at a time. That's going to determine whether a user that you invite into the league, another user, can create a coach or an owner or whatever you decide you want within your franchise. So really where owner mode comes into play here is adding financial aspects to the game that aren't present as a coach or anything else of that nature. So you're going to have this new tab in Madden 22 specifically. It pops up in a slightly different place on the prior games, but under our home tab here for this game, we now have our manage team tab, which is going to show our stadium, our team value, finances, marketing, fan happiness, and and team success, which are all things that don't matter to you as a coach pretty much. They are things that aren't going to matter to you as a player either, and they're not going to pop up for you. So the first things first, you can go and take a look at your stadium, and here, this is what's going to give you the option to determine whether you want to upgrade your stadium, rebuild your stadium, or relocate. And this is where one of our first major decision points comes into play, because you can see down there at the bottom that under relocate, it says the rating must be less than 20 in order to relocate your team. So heading over to Options tab and looking at Franchise Setting and then going to League Settings, we're going to be able to scroll down Relocation Setting slider here, where you can select Normal, Users Only, Everyone Can Relocate, All Users Only, Disabled. You get all these options to determine whether you can relocate or not. If you're looking to relocate a team and you're not looking to have any type of super realism where your stadium has to decline to the point of 20, then you're going to have to set this to Everyone Can Relocate. And that's going to allow you to be able to relocate your stadium anytime that you want, and that will allow you to start that entire process. So next, let's go ahead and take a look at the team value. This is not a tab that you're actually able to interact with. You can't really actually do anything here. You can sort by team value. It's going to tell you what your team value is in terms of all of these different categories. And this is essentially going to tell you where you fall in comparison to the rest of the league. So each player on your team is actually going to have a rating that dictates how popular they are as a player and what their personality is. And so you can see, if I scroll all the way to the right on my roster, each player is going to have a personality rating. This is where you get a good judge for how popular a player is going to be. Are they going to be able to generate sales for jerseys and things like that? And you can see that Russell Wilson here is a 98. Now, Russell Wilson in real life just traded to the Denver Broncos. There's a reason that that team traded for him. He's going to sell merchandise. He's going to get them wins. He's going to put them in a better position to succeed. And that is all reflected there in the player's rating as well as their personality rating. And so you may want to pay attention to that, and you may care for that aspect of franchise mode and managing a team, and therefore this is a benefit to owner mode, is that you have the option to kind of factor those things in and allow those things to dictate your decisions as a team and as an owner of that team. Likewise, this is going to lead us into our next section, which is marketing here, and we can take a look at player marketing, for example, which it's going to show you your top marketable players for the team, and it's going to show you that popularity and personality rating for those players yet again, and they are giving them two completely separate ratings here between popularity and personality. So these are things that you might want to factor in whenever you're considering who you have on your team. This might impact your decision, because NFL teams are driven by how many jerseys they can sell, the merchandise they can sell, because they are a profitable organization. They want to bring in more money. So if you want to play this realistically and have some of that aspect influence your decisions as an owner, you're able to here under this tab. So there are actually a couple of very small descriptions here underneath these various tabs. Under player marketing, it says acquire players with a higher personality rating to sell more jerseys. Under team popularity, it's going to say the higher your popularity is, the more revenue you bring in each week. So from that aspect, you can generate more revenue, which will allow you to sign better players in the long run. That is something that you have to watch out in off-season free agency. Your revenue and your funds that you have available to your team are going to affect who you can actually sign, because you're actually going to have to pay out bonuses to players and guaranteed money, and therefore you have to have the money to do that. So it does add an extra level of challenge to franchise mode. We'll dive into that a little bit later on in the video, but it does matter how much revenue you're bringing in as a team. And then under media relations, the answers you give in press conferences impact your fan happiness. So you actually have press conferences as an owner of a team. That's one feature that I like that wasn't introduced until Madden 22 in coach mode. You now do some press conference type stuff in coach mode. However, in owner mode, you've always had these extra press conferences and questions that you can answered that are going to affect team happiness, fan happiness, and things of that nature. And those are a really fun addition to the game and a more impactful way to play the game that give a little bit more of immersiveness to what you can do in franchise mode. So under the team popularity tab here, this is just going to give you some useful information to help gauge your popularity as a team. And then again, under media relations, this is where all of your answers to press conference questions are going to pop up. Next up, we can talk about fan happiness to bridge that gap. And under here, it is going to give you another breakdown of what fans are happy about and not happy about. And this is specifically related to fans, and it will give you feedback on the right side from social media. We then have our team success tab, which is going to give you essentially a graph over time of how successful your team is. And you can scroll from one team to another, and it's going to show you, over the years how successful a team's been. Now, right now, it's a flat line for every single team, but it will change as you go throughout your franchise. And this gives you a good idea of where your team is going, where your team has been in terms of their success, and you will see the difference in historic success as well as recent success. So this will be more of the current season, where historic is going to be based on your historic record as a team. You can see right here that the Seahawks have 355 career wins. And last but certainly not least, within this manage teams tab is your finances. This is actually where most of the stuff is going to be happening that you're trying to do with owner mode. You know what I mean? You're going to have your ticket prices, your merchandise prices, your concession prices, and you're going to get an overall look at your team revenue, which will be broken down by income and expenses, giving you a total net result at the bottom. So going in here, you can see that our ticket prices can be adjusted for your suite tickets, your club tickets, your mezzanine tickets, and your upper level tickets. And it's going to give you feedback. It's going to give you specifics on the right side that say this is too expensive or this is not expensive enough. And under each section, you can see that it says current price $575, fan feedback, good value. We see good value on every single one of our ticket prices, which is a pretty solid feedback for us to have. Likewise, we're going to have a very similar screen for our merchandise, but we now have 3 tabs. So we have team apparel, which is going to include everything from hats to jackets to t-shirts, where you then have jerseys for specific players, and then you have memorabilia like a signed football or a mini helmet. And then again, we're going to get to see the same thing for our concessions. You're going to have it broken down between basic, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star concessions, and this is going to be completely dependent on your stadium of whether or not you have access to some of the higher tiers or not. Now we're going to get to the thing that everybody wants to do if you're an owner, and that is generally going to be to relocate your team or rebuild a stadium. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to relocate the team just for the purposes of showing you guys how this process works. Are you sure you want to begin the team relocation process? I'm going to hit confirm, and it's going to pop up with I'll check with a couple cities and see if anyone's interested. Keep an eye on your things to do in a couple of weeks to choose the city, and it's going to pop up with this screen right here under construction. You'll be notified when it's time to choose our new city. So here in week 3, we get our first example of a media question. We're going to go ahead and click answer media question, and it's going to ask us a question on the left side, and then I'm going to be able to answer with a selection of 3 different answers on the right side. And then when you select that answer, it's going to give you a feedback of what's going to happen with the result of that question. So per game, after I've signed Jamal Adams, I'm going to get plus 5% to happiness and -2 per game that he's not signed. So that's going to affect your decision making whenever we were talking about signing that player. And like I said, it's now going to pop up under your media relations tab. You can see right here, you see the answer that you gave and the potential reward that is coming from it. And it'll actually show you the actual percentage awarded. So if I signed him this week and then played this game and advanced a week, it's going to give me plus 5%, and it will show that under the awarded position right there. Now, in week 5 of the regular season is where things are really going to start to take off. This is where you get to start your relocation by choosing a city. So we can see here that in week 5, we now have access to this. You can actually start your relocation at any point before that. We started it in preseason week 1. You could start your relocation in week 4. Nonetheless, you have to start it prior to this, and then you'll get this option in week 5. So we're going to go in and start our relocation and view available cities. Now it's going to pop up with all of the predetermined cities that are within the game. This isn't going to matter team by team. It's not going to change. It's the same for every single team. You're going to see now a percentage of fan interest, though, with this green bar underneath fan interest next to the NFL logo. You're also going to get some information here on the market size and the personality. It is always great to have a market that is large, that is going to generate you more revenue, and they're going to be a loyal personality or hardcore personality or something like that. So London is kind of the ideal choice because they have a huge market size and a loyal personality for the fan base. So we're just going to go with London for today's video. There are other solid options, but this is one of the best options, if not the best option, for relocating in terms of generating revenue and generating fan happiness. In the following week, in week 6, you will then get to choose your team's name. Now, for each location, there are multiple team names available to you, 3 actually to be exact. So for London, for example, you could choose between the Monarchs, the Black Knights, or the Bulldogs, or you have the option to select your current team name and utilize that one when you move. Now it's going to give you feedback on which name and logo that city actually likes. So this fan base seems to favor the Monarchs. I may not favor that. I may go with a different decision, but for today's video, we're just going to go with the purposes of selecting the Monarchs to show you that that is the one that they like the most. So we're going to relocate to London and become the London Monarchs. And again, in the following week, in week 7, you will have the option to select your uniform. You're going to have 3 options. It's going to give you a popularity poll on which one they like the most. This is the one where I recommend just making the selection that you like the most. Now, you can always, before you choose your city and before you choose your team name and logo, look up online the team names and logos and uniforms for Madden, because they've been the same for multiple years now. You'll get to see every single one, and it's going to allow you to make a more informed decision ahead of time so you don't get stuck with uniforms that you don't like. But nonetheless, you get to select your uniform. I'm just going to select the most popular option here again today that had 78%. Next week, in week 8, you'll be able to choose your stadium, and this is going to allow you to have the option between selecting basic levels of each stadium or deluxe versions of each stadium. Now, there are 5 types of stadiums and 2 levels of those stadiums. So you've got the basic canopy, basic futuristic, basic hybrid, basic sphere, and basic traditional versus the deluxe version of each of those. Each of these is going to have important information below them that you're going to want to consider whenever you are selecting your stadium. So number 1, you're going to want to consider, do you want a domed stadium or do you want an open stadium? Do you want the weather to affect your games or not? That's going to be primary decision number 1. And then you're going to see the build cost and the weekly cost, and these numbers are going to affect how much money you have going on. So if I go with, for example, the deluxe futuristic stadium, it's going to cost me 0.35 mil per week to maintain this stadium, which is going to be a lot of money. So you need to know that you can generate a lot of money as a team, generate a lot of revenue in order to cover those costs. So it is worth considering that amount of money. I'm going to select that stadium for purposes here. You can press X once on here to see the breakdown of how many seats there are of each type. You can see the level 5s of each thing. You can see all the details of the facilities and everything like that. And then it's going to take a second push of the button to begin construction. So that's important to know, that you can press in once in order to see further detail, and then you confirm the construction on the second button push. So I want to show you guys, as we advance to the offseason, what happens. You can see that in Super Bowl week, we are still the Seattle Seahawks, but as we transition over to the offseason, it will then select our new name. So you can see as soon as we went over from the Super Bowl week, we are now the London Monarchs. So that is extremely important for you guys to know, that you're going to be waiting until the offseason ticks over in order to actually see your team change, and that will allow you to then be in that city and be that new team that you've chosen. The final thing that I have to go over here with you guys so that you know is that your funds in the top right-hand corner are going to be utilized to pay out the bonuses on contracts of players that you sign. So if I go to sign free agents and I go to select any given player, let's say I want to negotiate with Devontae Adams, for example, you will see that your available funds is actually extremely important for these contracts contract negotiations, and they will be utilized to sign that player. So I'm going to go ahead and pay him a ton of money and show you guys that once we actually sign this player, going over from 1 week to the next, our available funds are going to decrease by the amount of money that we're paying that player. Our available funds went down from 235 million to 161 million. We paid out that entire bonus at the time of signing the contract, which was about $15 million a year, ultimately coming out to like $75 million in bonus. That is extremely important to remember, and the ultimate challenge of owner mode within Madden, because your funds now become significantly more important. Actually, they become important because they're not important as a coach. You can go negative in funds as a coach, and it doesn't matter. And that's why most people play a franchise mode as a coach, because it is significantly easier. You don't have to worry about the team's revenue and the money aspect of things quite as much. So if you want to play an owner mode, just know that it is going to cost you money to sign these players out of your funds. Now, all hope is not lost. If you don't want to worry about that, the final thing I'm going to show you in today's video is you can always go find the user teams, find the members in your league, and click on a member, press X for actions, and add $5 million in funds. So that's everything that you guys need to know as a beginner to owner mode within Madden. Like I said, this applies to multiple years. It's been pretty much the same for multiple years now. So hopefully you guys found this information useful. I'll see you guys in the next video. Make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. As always, like I said, I'll see you in the next one, and I hope you have a good one.